Joining us right now is former Georgia Congressman Jack Kingston. Congressman, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to see you, Maria.
So Trump is getting slammed by Democrats and the mainstream media, by the way. Do you agree that the system is rigged?
I think there's overwhelming bias against any conservative candidate, but Donald Trump in particular. I think the media has attacked him with a vengeance. Present network excluded from that, but one number that caught my attention is last week on a given night, monitoring 3 of the main television stations, in a 66-minute period, they dedicated 57 seconds to Wikileaks and 23 minutes to the so-called sex allegations. So 23 minutes against Trump and 57 seconds against Hillary. And that's typical of what we've been seeing, not just this last week, of course, not just this present topic, but for months now.
Right. I don't think there's any question that the mainstream media is favoring Hillary Clinton. Dagan, I know you have a theory about this.
I have a theory that the mainstream media, and particularly here in New York, it's largely left-wing and liberal, the people who work there. I mean, they make no bones about it. But they regret giving rise to Donald Trump. This is my theory. Because they gave him so much media coverage during the nominating process for the Republican nomination. And they covered him over and over again because he was incredible ratings. He is incredibly entertaining. And now that they have regrets. And I'll point to the New York Post today on page 6. Page 6, the top story there is that NBC plotted Trump's demise by leaking that tape to the Washington Post, and they say in this article that page 6 has confirmed that there's no NBC News internal investigation into who leaked that Trump tape to the Washington Post, sparking many network insiders to speculate this was sanctioned by the people at the top.
And also in that article, it says that they have another tape, a damaging tape about Hillary Clinton, that they're not releasing.
Right. It involves an interview that Juanita Broderick did back in 1999 for Dateline, and it was a part of what Broderick said about how Hillary Clinton interacted with her. It never aired, and it'll never see the light of day, apparently.
I think it's important to note that the media has come out and tried to defend themselves, and they've said it's unethical for them to cover the Wikileaks, which is complete hypocrisy because every news story that is broken has been from some uncovering of private information. And so I just find it funny that that's been the excuse. It's like, hey, it's unethical for us to report on this.
Meanwhile, we learned a lot from the Wikileaks. They're important, Harlan.
Yeah, they're material to the... Go ahead, Congressman.
If you look at the tax returns obtained illegally by the New York Times, they had no qualms publishing that. But, you know, a couple of years ago when that ClimateGate scandal came out, 2009, they said they would not publish or reveal that story because the information was obtained illegally. So total hypocrisy by the New York Times.
Give me a
Same
break.
issue.
Can I raise one issue really quickly about when Trump uses the word rigged, and I know that some of his surrogates have, including yourself, Congressman, have tried to explain that he's talking about the media, but he also tweeted that he's talking about polling places. And when you tell your supporters, hey, the election is rigged, aren't you telling them your vote doesn't really count? Does that hurt voter turnout for him?
Well, you never know, but what we want to do is make sure that our base doesn't get discouraged by these attacks on Donald Trump, that they do show up. But, you know, we have seen many, many fishy things happen over the years in some of these polling places. Chicago is always picked on, but in reality, it happens all over the country. And so we have to have poll watchers, we have to have vigilance, we have to have our people show up. And, you know, it's just part of the game. We have got to be very, very tough. We don't have the machine politics that the Democrat Party has. You know, they come out of a different culture background politically, and they're very good at it. So
by the way,
we have to be on our toes.
How many dead people were they using in Virginia? I mean, you know, people were dead, and their names were there voting, Harlan.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not out of the world. I mean,
it's a real issue.
It's been uncovered.
I actually used to run a voting machine startup that was trying to fix this. Yeah, for a couple of years, venture-backed. And I know what was really alarming is traveling all over the country and seeing how vulnerable our infrastructure was. And Donald Trump is actually the first candidate to raise this. And he was originally, he was ridiculed. But then we saw Barack Obama, we saw the NSA come out and say, yeah, our infrastructure is vulnerable. This is an issue of national security, and we have to take it seriously. But getting back to WikiLeaks, there are so many accusations, and there's so much evidence that's material to Hillary Clinton's character. You know, I mean, she talked about open trade, open borders, pay to play, fracking abroad but not at home. She coordinated with PACs that were in support of her. That's illegal. It's against the law. You know, she said that she had a public and a private position because the people can't handle the truth. They destroyed evidence. I mean, there is so much here. She's such a target-rich candidate, and for the media to ignore it is just journalistic malpractice.
Yep.
And I don't see how they can recover from this in the long term.
Yep. And as part of those WikiLeaks, Congressman, they show one of the emails showed top Clinton aides were upset that a Muslim man was named as the shooter in last year's San Bernardino massacre. A Clinton consultant sends a story on the shooting reported by MSNBC, Christopher Hayes, to Podesta, and he responds, quote, well, better if a guy named Saeed Farouk was reporting that a guy named Christopher Hayes was the shooter.
And it just screams volumes of how uncomfortable they are with the war. You know, our radical jihadists, they'll never say those words, radical Islam. That's why they're so ineffective when it comes to the war on terrorism. And also in the WikiLeaks, it does show that Hillary Clinton says that terrorism is not a threat to the United States.
Right.
Where are these people coming from? And, you know, Harlan just enumerated a whole list of things. There's even more than that. The treatment of Catholics, the NAACP, the needy Latino against Bill Richardson, open borders, universal health care, two different stands on trade policy, on tax policies. The list absolutely goes on and on and on. And you're right, it is journalistic malpractice and total hypocrisy. But I will be quick to say this. Even if it was any of the other 16 candidates, I think the media would still be doing this. They will rise to the threat. Donald Trump is a threat to the establishment. He's a threat to them, and they're using all their guns that they need to get him out of this race. But they would have done the same to any other of the 16 candidates. And I always hear, well, if John Kasich was your nominee, he'd be up 10 points by now. Absolutely not true. We see this over and over again with the media. They did it to Romney. They did it to McCain. And they're relentless.
By the way, it just went through all the front pages of the New York Times, the Washington Post. Not a word about WikiLeaks on any of the top stories, the front pages there of today's newspapers. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you, Maria.
Jack Kingston joining us there.